Good morning, everyone. I'm Mr. Charles, the Diversity Awareness Club advisor here at Greenwich High School. This is day 4. Could you believe that? We're already on day 4 of Diversity Awareness Week. We want to welcome you to this, our first presentation for today. Our focus for this morning's presentation is on empowering students in Rwanda. We will have, or you will have the opportunity to ask questions. Just note that your teachers shared with you a Google form. In that Google form, you can write your questions, which we will be sharing with our presenters. So we are fortunate to have 2 successful Rwandan education advocates who will be introduced here by Ms. Paula Varnels from the Level Up organization. Thank you.
All right, great, thanks. Good morning again, everybody. Some of you may have joined our sessions earlier in the week, brought to you by Level Up Village. This is our 3rd session, and we're really happy to be here, happy to have been invited to organize with you for this week. So again, my name is Paula Vanels. I work for Level Up Village. Our mission is to bring students from around the world together for collaborative learning experiences. And today's session is a presentation and discussion about empowering students in Rwanda. We've invited 2 associates of Level Up Village, David Dusabirane and Benen Mugisha, to describe their experiences straddling the educational systems and cultures of both Rwanda and the United States. Since they're going to tell you about themselves, that is the bulk of their presentation, I asked them only to tell me a fun fact about themselves that they couldn't work into their presentations, so as not to give away their presentation. So with that, I learned that David is into swimming and running, and Benen is into rowing. And that's all I'm going to say about them, because they're going to tell you about themselves. All right, so with that, over to David and Benen.
Perfect. David, you want to take it away and maybe share the presentation so that we can start from there? I can't quite bring mine up right now.
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Paul, for the introduction. And, I can see everyone, the students, but I'm glad to meet you all. And I'm hoping that over the next 50 minutes or so, we are going to have a fruitful discussion about our experience working in education, as well as attending US colleges. So I'm going to share a small presentation that we have, and then Benon will kick off the presentation. We'll take it from there. So can everyone see my
Now we can see it. Maybe yeah, we're going to present mode. Thanks.
Okay. So this is Rwanda. Benon, do you want to start off?
Yeah, sure thing. Hello, everybody. My name is Benen Mugisha, as Paula had mentioned, and it's very nice to have this opportunity to come and speak to everybody about mainly our experiences and a little sneak peek into where we come from. We're from Rwanda, a very little-known country for anything else, but what you usually hear about, and the first thing that comes to your mind when they talk about Rwanda, you go to either the movies that you have watched, Hotel Rwanda, or the 1994 Genocide, and that is a very significant part of our history. And whenever people mention it, I usually don't take offense at it. It's mainly it's sort of like an icebreaker for somebody that has not had a chance to really talk to somebody that that is from here. So just to put that a little bit on the side, Rwandan genocide happened 27 years ago, and within 27 years, especially in a developing country, a whole lot goes on. Development is very rapid, very swift. And a fun fact is, the moment that you leave Rwanda for a year, there's a very good chance that by the time you come back, the road you used to travel are not the same. They've been diverted so that a new building, state-of-the-art architecture has been put in place for revitalizing, the country. But anyway, a little bit about, Rwanda. It's in the heart of Africa, or so they call it. It's, the heart of Africa because, as you can see, it's a little bit towards is it the left or the right? The left. So yeah, depending on like where you're looking at the map from. But it's called the Heart of Africa, and the capital is Kigali, and we are bordered by 4 countries. A lot of y'all probably heard the Congo. So that's the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it's it's towards the west of Rwanda. And we have the Republic of Tanzania on the eastern side. We have Uganda on the northern side, and Burundi on the southern side of Rwanda. We enjoy a relatively peaceful relationship with most of our neighbors, and we have a president. So it's not a kingdom, unlike what stereotypically a lot of people that are not familiar with the country think about. That are unfamiliar with Africa think about maybe like kingdoms or like tribes. But Rwanda is a very close-knit community, and we have one president, and we all speak one single language. And this is not typical for a lot of countries in Africa, where you find most of them have over 100 languages and multiple types of people and languages and cultures. Rwanda is just one unified country with one single language, which is Kinyarwanda. And what you're seeing there is the capital city, Kigali, at night. And that's one of the state-of-the-art centers called the Convention Center. It's used to house meetings, conferences, international conferences. And actually, if all goes well, if the pandemic kind of dies down, then Kigali will be hosting the next CHOGM meeting. And that's a very huge deal for all English-speaking countries, but most especially for Rwanda, because it's going to get to host such a great event. And that speaks very highly to the level of security and the level of development that has happened between, what very many people know, the 1994 genocide. And within those 27 years, a lot has happened to even allow such a high-level meeting to take place here in Rwanda. We are very fortunate that we have the highest number of females represented in the decision-making departments of the country. So in the parliament, we have the highest number of women all over the world. We are number 1 because we have over 65% of parliament composed of women. And this is not just as a result of Rwanda wanting to, promote gender equality only, which is also a part of it, but it's really to show what kind of progress that has happened, where these positions are based on merit, except the 30% that's supposed to be women. But the fact that I've gone from 30%, which is the quota, to 65% really speaks just a ton about the capacity of women to be instrumental in the development of a country that has gone through tremendous change. And we are very proud of that. And we always like to brag, all over the world. When we're in the US, do they respect women's issues in your country? Then we go, you really should learn a little bit about, a little bit from Rwanda. So I think that's something that we can all be proud of. There are a lot of businesses represented so Rwanda's GDP is mostly like agriculture, but we also have a lot of young leaders that are starting to come up and representing our generation. Rwanda is about 65% youth, and that really has helped a lot in the development of the country. And that's what our money looks like. So don't get confused by the huge number you see there. I know the highest denomination in the dollars is $100 bill, but our highest is 5,000 Rwandan francs, and it's equivalent to about, I don't know, maybe $6. So it's 5,000 here, but it's only about $6 in the US. So there's a very huge exchange rate. We have the last surviving silverback primates, the gorillas, and they're only found in the mountainous areas here in Rwanda, in the Nyungwe forest. And if you happen to make a visit, whether surprise or not, they always really take good care of you when, if you want to do some sort of visiting, and you can stand right next to a gorilla and take a picture of it. David has had that experience, and he could probably tell you that it's breathtaking. And I think the topography of Rwanda is very varied, but the consensus is Rwanda is the land of 1,000 hills. So that is because everywhere you go, it's just like hills upon hills. It's got 1,000 hills for a reason. So the topography is just very uneven, but in the most beautiful and breathtaking way possible. I like to make a joke about it because usually when you want to travel from point A to point B, if you're in, let's say, Texas, that would take you about maybe 20 minutes. In Rwanda, the same kind of point where you can be able to see it, it will take you probably about 2.5 hours, because you have to meander around a mountain, around a hill, and then you can see where you're going, but for some reason you can't reach. So it's usually very funny, but also a little frustrating if you got to get somewhere. And multiple lakes, and it's just a really beautiful country in general. We are very big in coffee. If you've ever had Rwandan coffee, you would know that it's amazing. But I think I'll stop there in regards to where we come from and what the country is like, and maybe hop onto the subject at hand, which is our journey from Rwanda to the US and then back, and how that entire experience has allowed us to really impact our communities both here and in the US while we're still there. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you very much, Benon. That was a very interesting spotlight on Rwanda. So yeah, the topic of today is empowerment of students in Rwanda. And as students who were ourselves empowered while we were in the country, and also with our time in the US, we think that this is really a perfect opportunity to share what we have learned, either in Rwanda or in the US. So yeah, the story of Rwanda is really about rebuilding and reconstruction. Like as Benon mentioned, the country is pretty much 27 years old, and we are counting after the utter complete of the destruction of the country during the 1994 genocide. So there were a lot of initiatives as part of the reconstruction and rebuilding process to invest in the young people. And one of really interesting programs or initiative that took place in Rwanda is called Bristol Rwanda, from which Benon and I benefited from. So Bristol Rwanda Scholars Program is like a gap year and college prep program that was started by an American. and he is on the Presidential Advisory Council. So he's a close advisor of President Kagame, who is our president. And one of the things that the president asked him is to really invest in young Rwandans to access world-class education, to compete and win scholarship just like everybody else all over the world. So the program was established in Kigali back in 2011. And so it's designed for high school leavers, students who graduate from high school, to spend about 16 months in a boot camp, learning about SATs and TOEFLs, and also like, you know, the structure and the curriculum of especially North American universities. So here you can see, actually here on this picture, like on left, you can see Benon. That's Benon who was speaking, and
I'm the one in the checkered shirt.
yeah, and yeah, this is like, you know, the place where selected students get to meet and spend 16 months together. It's like a boarding setting where you kind of like study there and live there, and then you basically working on improving your English, working on SATs, and learning about the college application process. And so Benon and I spent there 16 months back in 2014. And as you can see here, like we get such a good training that we are able to compete and win scholarships from colleges, like top colleges all over the world. So here, like it's the group 6 of scholars with the t-shirts representing the schools that they are going to be attending. And the idea of the Bristol Rwanda is that we go in the US and then we study, and we come back in Rwanda to be part of the transformation that's taking place. So Benon attended Stanford University in Alabama.
Go Bulldogs! Go Bulldogs!
He's very proud of Stanford. I think Benon, that's why you learned lawing, right? And
Yeah,
now,
can I say a little bit about just my time at university, maybe to kind of like cut down. So basically, after graduating from the program, Bristol Rwanda program, what happened was I earned a full ride, 4-year scholarship to Stanford University, and I was among the honor students. They selected about 40 every year from the incoming class of about 800 students. So that was a very prestigious like spot for a person with a local education to be able to have an opportunity to go study in the US at a university like that. Stanford University is located in Birmingham, Alabama. And if any of y'all know or have been down to the South, you probably have heard of the university. It's not Stanford. A lot of people like to confuse the two. This is the better, this is the better university, and I enjoyed spending my time there. And yes, that's where I learned how to row. I just tried out for the team, and I actually I beat the fastest time from one of the varsity members. So everybody was like, "Hey, come join us." It was very awesome. I didn't know how to do it, but just my time on the rowing machines kind of like helped me propel me into becoming a part of the team. I mean, I must admit it was just brute force, no skill at that point. But after I got on the team, then I learned, how to do it right, and I did it for about 2 years. And I was able to spend my 4 years there. I started 2 years in the business school, but you're high school students, so probably you'll get to experience this. Once you get to university, there's so many dreams and hopes that you have set in your mind. This is what I want to do. But if you're fortunate to go to a liberal arts school, then you get to realize that a lot of things change within your life that really influence your thinking. You might want to be a doctor, and that's very noble. And then you get to university, and just the experiences that you have with your fellow students or the people that you meet from different walks of life challenges you to look at the world in a totally different way. And then you might find yourself, majoring in social work. And that's also a very noble profession, because a profession is made noble by your intention while you're choosing it. It's not just because a huge number of people want to do it. If you believe you're doing it for, usually for the good of the whole, for the good of mankind, and you want to create an impact on the world, then whatever you choose to do is the right decision for you. It's obviously coming from Rwanda or from Africa, where typically your parents sends you to school and they're like, okay, you're going to become a doctor, say yes or say yes. So really, you just gotta, head in with, a preconceived idea of what you want to do. And it usually doesn't always turn out that way because of the experiences that you have. Now, I'm also going to be very candid with you all that usually your change is also not necessarily influenced by the experiences that you have, even though that's a good thing. Sometimes academically, you are more likely to excel at certain things and not others. And that was my case. It was the experiences, but also because I excelled a lot more in things that had nothing to do with business. And when I say business, it's school kind of business, because I do great as a business person in real life. But as you will learn over time, it's what you learn in school helps a lot, but it really helps you to learn. It doesn't help you, if you study business, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to become a business person. It just gives you the skills to learn how to learn. And I don't know what other way to put it, but that's as simple as I can get it. You go there and the ideas that you had about business are challenged or they're emphasized. So when I got there, I just found my passion to be in political science in regards to academia, not in regards to practice. So when it came to the practical things of how do I want to help my community, there was a strong need for leaders in the business environment, and I had a passion for business outside of school. So in school, what I did was political science, and it really helped me to understand how government institutions influence businesses. So my 2 years of business school did not go to waste either. I was able to couple the two things and be able to get into a field that I wanted. And we're going to go into, how we ended up in the education sector, after studying political science and doing business. But I'll let David get back with it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Benon, for sharing about your experience at Stanford. So yeah, unlike Benon, who went in the South, I was in the Northeast, specifically in Rhode Island at Brown University. And like Benon, I spent the first 2 years studying computer science. But then during my sophomore, senior, I realized that I had a strong passion for storytelling. So I switched to creative writing. I think I really was confused at the time. I didn't know what I wanted to do professionally, but I decided to do what I was passionate about academically. And after graduation, just the way Benon, I think at the end of the journey, things come together. Like the way Benon was able to combine computer science, like political science and business. I was also able to combine computer science and literature or creative writing in general. And so I ended up in education. And when we came back, we launched the ADUV chapter, the Rwandan chapter. and I was able to use my background in computer science to promote education technology in Rwanda. And so part of what we do, I think you are more or less familiar with Level Up Village. And so we used stories that encourage students to think about practical side of the stories. So these stories were really about engineering, and at the end of the story, there is maybe a problem you want to solve, and the idea is really to, you know, improve critical thinking among young students, as well as giving them an international exposure, because we could use technology to connect them to students from other parts of the world. So we did that from June 1929 up to this moment. We are still part of the initiative. It's just that the pandemic has disrupted our operations. But we are always excited to be part of this great initiative of connecting students all over the world, share cultures and perspectives about what's going on in the world. So when the pandemic came in, there was a lockdown in Rwanda, and the schools were closed. And since we had been part of that journey of promoting education technology, we thought about what we could do to facilitate schools, teachers and learners to continue studying despite being confined in their own homes. So we created what we called Wakame Advisors. And the idea of this company was to advise schools on how they could keep learning by leveraging on technology. And we were able to support a number of schools in Kigali to keep learning during the pandemic using technology. So I think from what we are looking at in the future is to keep being part of education initiatives that are designed to empower students in order to access the best possible education quality. And we are still innovating, we are still learning, we are still seeking partnerships. But I think ever since both of us came in Rwanda, we have been really braced to be part of such great initiatives like River Up Village, even giving back to Bristol Rwanda, because they're still training like Rwandan students and students from the region, actually, because we also have students from the Congo, Burundi, and South Sudan. So to share what we've learned in the US, and also as part of River Up Village and Wakame Advisors. So I think we can open up for questions so that we can have more of a discussion with you and answer some of the questions that you have for us. So thank you so much for following our presentations. The floor is yours.
Thank you both, David and Benen. That was super interesting for me too, because I've never heard the whole story, so that was great. There are some questions rolling in, and the first one I'm actually going to toss to you. Actually, yeah, you can stop sharing if you want, and then we can see you even better. The first question I'm going to ask is somewhat related to what the last thing that you were describing, and I'm going to add to it. So the question is, what are your hopes for the scholarship training group in Rwanda? I guess Bridge to Rwanda that you went through. But I would add to that, you know, what are your hopes for the educational system in general. So now you're working in elementary schools, again, kids go on to high school and then on to university. What is it, you hope for in terms of, again, progress in the educational system in Rwanda at this stage?
I think as David takes a breath from presenting, I can take that. And really, our hope is that for as long as this program is available to Rwandan students or to East African students, really, right now, I think there's going to be a tremendous change in the way that we view the world. And my hope is that for every student like me and David, who had the opportunity to have a global perspective, that we learn from each other, and maybe for the high school students watching us right now, the hope is that as you go into colleges, you might find people from all across the world, and from either from Rwanda or from Nigeria, you never know, and from all walks of life, that the first instinct that one has to have is that this is a learning process. It's not a time for for my stereotypes to be re-emphasized or denied. It's more, I am an open book, and I come here with a person with a totally different perspective of the world than myself, and there's a lot more to be shared across the board from students in the United States and also from students in Africa. And I learned that firsthand, especially being an African student, a Black student, going to school in the South. It could have gone all sorts of ways, but because I went there with an open mind, and the hope was that if everybody is going to see me as human, an African, and then a student, then all those identities, each individual identity does not define me as a whole. We are complex beings, and we are a combination and a culmination of all our experiences and everything that we come from. Same thing with the students in the United States. A student, an American who has parents that are missionaries, that has spent time in Africa or in Bangladesh, and also had an experience in the U.S., is a totally different person than an American who has spent all their life in the US. And that is not a bad thing. That's actually the beauty of differences. The moment you start learning that the fact that somebody has had different perspectives from you and different experiences from you makes them an amazing person to learn from, then we're going to have a whole lot of a learning experience that goes from all sides, from all sides of the globe. And the hope is that the Rwandan students that are a part of the program will also do that and learn from the American students in that way. And I did that for myself, and it was absolutely incredible and amazing to learn everything that I've learned. The hope now for the education system and what we've been trying to do was focus on the elementary schools, because we have realized the problem is not with a lack of skill within the kids, but it's a change in a change in the perspective of the teachers. Because usually you go in there, and for the teachers that are probably watching us, that the moment that you enter a class, you automatically become a role model for the kids that are sitting before you. So if you do not have a whole lot to share in regards to global perspectives, or you don't have the skills necessary to impart a knowledge that they will start from at a very early age, then it gets harder as they grow. So what David and I had been looking into before the pandemic hit, was we were trying to create a learning center for the teachers to come and test their computer skills, but also find their individuals that are globally educated, but also have the knowledge of the local setting and the challenges that the teachers are going through, and then bridge that gap, that knowledge gap, and allow them to impart the same skills to their students. And we still have that goal. It's not as easy during the pandemic, but that is still the goal. Ultimately, we want to be able to train the teachers that are going to train the students to provide a continuity of information, but also of a global perspective, because the world is getting smaller, as you saw in the name of Level Up Village, just leveling up, a village and getting everybody on the same level to be able to share, perspectives. And I think that's my take on it, and my hope for the education center here in Africa, Rwanda, and also around the world.
Great, thank you. I'm going to ask another question. Benen, you were the poli-sci major, but it's for either one of you who has an idea first. But the question really is, what were the factors in Rwanda that allowed Rwanda, at the beginning you described, how much progress, from the time of the genocide till now, in Rwanda, how things have changed so quickly, and again, how much progress has been made. What were the factors in Rwanda that allowed that rapid progress?
Yeah, thank you very much, Paula. That's a very, very good question. I think there is many answers to that question, but the most important thing is that the post-genocide administration wanted to put the people at the center of every decision making, be it in the health sector, in the education sector, security. The government over the last 27 years has really invested in people. And in practical sense, this is where you see the government giving the whole population health insurances, and also like making education as accessible as free, because we have like 9 years basic education, which is free of charge. So they wanted to invest in the new generation, give them as much opportunities as possible to realize their fullest potential. And that's how me and Benon and countless others ended up in the US and other places in the world to really take advantage of these opportunities, but also to come back in Rwanda and be part of the transformation. And the transformation happens by making Rwanda business friendly, allowing international investors to open businesses easily and facilitate them so that these young people, so on one hand, you are attracting foreign investments in the country. On the other hand, you are training local talents to basically be the labor within these industries, and that's how they get trained. And after acquiring enough experiences, they can start their own businesses, which is what's happening now, because this has been happening for 2 decades now. So yeah, in a nutshell, the government thought about centering people when they are making decisions that affect the whole nation, and also creating opportunities, especially for young people to realize their fullest potential.
Great, thank you. Here's a question that kind of goes back to the beginning of your presentation, where when you were saying that it is the first thing people ask, about the genocide, and it's something, again, because of Hollywood and whatever other reason, it's top of people's mind when they meet you, from other parts of the world. So the question is, how are the assumptions about the genocide harmful? How is it harmful when people think of that as the first thing when they think about or when they talk to you about Rwanda?
I think what I can say about that is the assumptions are usually, I think that the only issue here is not the assumptions themselves, but it's the fact that there's a very broad space, or a very many sources of information, of real uh, true information, credible information out there. But I think usually, I think it also has to do with the fact that sometimes our perspective on the world is very limited, and we do not open ourselves up to the possibilities that when you go searching for something to learn about a new culture, is that you in a way put yourself in an echo chamber where the things that you already have in your mind are the things that you actually go searching, instead of being like, okay, this is Rwanda and I've heard this about it. What information is out there in very many facets that I can be able to learn from? So the assumptions are okay if they have a genuine interest in what they're assuming to be the case. If you have an assumption, let's say um, people migrated during that time, let's say to the Congo, and they were mistreated, or that they mistreated people that they found there. Okay, now that is an assumption, but there's so many sources out there that you can go to and consult and be like, okay, what actually happened, and these are the sources. And by the point that you come to a conversation, because usually these assumptions get problematic when you get into a conversation with somebody that has an identity with the place that you're talking about, because it could be assumed that you only want them to prove you wrong or right, instead of, I'm coming here because I know this about Rwanda, but educate me, or let's have a discussion, because usually we can learn about a lot about each other. Because I like to be fair in this kind of like approach, especially because I'm Black and I also have that history. So when I go to the United States, they don't see an African; they see an African American, regardless of where you come from. And then I have to first think about, okay, what assumptions am I bringing to the table about the way that, let's say, what Americans treated African Americans during the 1950s, 1960s, and right now. And I owe it to myself, but also out of respect to the people that I'm going to have a conversation with, to have accurate information about those things, and come with something to the table to be able to discuss about. I think that's the only time that assumptions are not problematic, but they can be if they lack a genuine interest in knowing the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think you were going to say something. But yeah, go ahead.
No, and you go ahead and add to that if you wanted to add to that, David. That's great. We'll have time for one more question after that. So go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, great. So I really like how Benon really like combine the impact of assumptions and to the whole country, but also share his experience as a person. But maybe to add on that, since my background is literature, there is this writer that I really like. Her name is called Chimamanda Adichie. You probably have heard of her. She's a Nigerian American author, and she talks about the danger of a single story. And basically, she talks about how our lives, our cultures are composed of many overlapping stories. And she really talks about how she found her authentic cultural voice, and wants that if we hear only a single story about another person or a country, we risk a critical misunderstanding. And then, so in the case of Rwanda, as well as the US, you can think of Rwanda in terms of a genocide only. It's the same as thinking of the US in terms of slavery only, but US is more than slavery. It's a country that represents democracy and justice and the pursuit of happiness. And there are so many things that America has contributed to the world. And I think that's what's happening in Rwanda, because despite of our tragic history, we are now one of the leading peacekeepers, contributors on the continent, and actually like also in the Western Hemisphere, because our national police are like in South Africa, in Haiti, and we have our army in South Sudan. So there is a lot that's being done by the country that should, also be highlighted, instead of being as reduced to this history of genocide. And so I think what I would encourage young people, especially who are listening to us, is to be curious, um, to really dig deep and finding out more about a person or a place than what they are being told in the media. So yeah, thank you so much for whoever asked that question. It's a very thoughtful question. And I hope that after this presentation, you do a little more research about Rwanda, and we'll be available if you have some question to ask us on the email or however. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add. Paula, you can take over.
Great. All right, we have time for one last question, and then maybe a quickish answer, but it lends itself to a quickish answer. So the question is, what's one part of Rwandan life and culture that if we embrace that here in the US would make life here better in the US? And I'm going to add to that, in your original set of slides that I looked at, I saw one slide which you must have edited out, but it was something around the culture of coming together at the end of the month to help people. There was a word for it in Rwandan native language, to come together and help people, whether fix their homes or do something like that. So I don't want to say that is the answer, but what aspect of Rwandan culture, if we embraced it here, you think would make life here even better, having been on both sides in both countries?
Okay. Yeah, I can try answering that. There's a book by Adam Smith, one of like the fathers of economics, that he's also the father of capitalism in a way, but I think there's a tendency, especially on the Western Hemisphere, to look at capitalism as just this feeding beast that just like take and just keep taking, and just resources go to those who can utilize them best, and that's the whole idea. But Adam Smith, in one of his books, says that Western capitalism has lost its soul, and the idea in why he was saying that was that as you're trying to benefit yourself, the best way you can benefit yourself is to, in a way, develop the whole. Because if a huge number of people have a way to live, if they can make a living, then it's also easier on you, the person that's trying to make money, because you don't have very many people asking for handouts, something like that. So when it comes to the perspective of Rwanda, it's what you're talking about, where people come together. It's called umuganda, or community service, and it's the end of the month. I think it's the last Saturday of the month, where everybody comes together. The leaders, the citizen, the president participates and come into the different neighborhoods, and just folds up his sleeves and touches the mud, or like digs holes, plants trees. So it's kind of like in a way showing that we are stronger together. And I think that's one thing that I found to be a little bit of of an issue on the side of the United States, where it's very individualistic in a way. If we're being very generic, it's very individualistic. But the thing that allowed Rwanda to develop from a devastated kind of state of affairs to the development and being like one of the leading contributors to world peace was that we realized that individually we could do great individually, but the fact of the matter is that in the long run, very many people will be left behind to fend for themselves, and that is going to catastrophically hinder the country in development. This is not just in development, but also in the way that we socialize, especially, let's say, I who went to school in the South, in Alabama. If what I think they can take a little bit of a leaf from the Rwandan story is reconciliation, but reconciliation with there's what they call reconciliation with repentance. So you can't ask somebody to reconcile or to forgive you if you're not willing to accept culpability in what you did. And so the Rwandan story is such that the people that that had met the tragedies and the people that that had done them were able to come together for the benefit of the whole, for the benefit of development, and they're able to live in harmony. It's not easy, but it's very doable once everybody shows the willingness and an understanding that together they are better than just the individual.
I definitely want to thank both of you for presenting today. I know most of the students are signing out at this point. And definitely thank you once again for taking the time to share your experiences with our students. So on behalf of Greenwich High School, thank you for doing this for us.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Charles.